Right, Steve. So, podcast number 11.
Yep.
My title this time.
Yes.
I thought. You ready?
Go for it. Hit me, John.
I
Well, don't hit me because you're bigger than me. But go on.
Friendship and belonging.
Yes. Okay. Nice.
Now, the reason this
Well,
came.
why? Yes.
The reason this came to me,
Yeah.
as you know, I've just recently spent a weekend in Dublin.
No, I don't think you mentioned it, John.
I know. I like to keep these things close to my chest.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I went to see my mates. I went to see some music. I had a great weekend, or a great couple of days away, and it was
Yeah.
great fun.
Brilliant.
And I caught up with an old friend of mine who I hadn't seen for 40 years, and so that was good. And caught up with some other, of course, some new friends, some old friends. It was great. It was wonderful. It was. It was friendship and music all for the whole 3 days.
Lovely.
And I absolutely loved it. Yeah, and it was very important to me.
Yeah.
One thing that struck me was when I was an old school friend of mine who was kind of my best mate at school.
Yeah.
Caught up with him a while ago, so we've been friends now since we were 9, and we had a big gap of like 30 years where we lost touch because he was in Dublin, I was in England, and we, for whatever reason. We've recently sort of reunited, and it's been great, and I've been seeing a lot of him over the last couple of years. And then he got another friend of ours out who I hadn't seen for like 40 years, and we met up. And it just struck me that when we were sat there having a coffee and I was chatting, it was so easy to drop back into that friendship. And even just kind of looking at him.
Are you a school friend? Were they school friends?
They were school friends.
Okay.
And just kind of looking at him, I was thinking, do you know what I mean? Even though it's 40 years, first of all, you get that thing of like, oh, he's changed quite a lot. Yeah. And as soon as you start talking, it's like the look in the eyes, just the way they smile, the way they laugh, all that sort of thing. It's just so familiar that you just slip straight back into that.
And did you grow up in the same area together?
Yes, we did. Yeah. So we were all knocking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that that aspect, it just struck me as how important friendship is to us, generally as a support mechanism. For keeping us grounded, for keeping us calibrated. Not always, do you know what I mean? There are other sides to it.
Can be bad influences.
And so I wanted to talk about that. So I wanted to discuss the whole idea of friendship and where that came in as well. We normally try and link these two subjects, friendship and belonging. Yeah. Now, friendship and belonging, are often a lot of it very overlapping there.
Yeah,
because when I was sat there talking to them, I felt like I really belonged somewhere. But also the importance of belonging to community. The importance of belonging to, to different things. I mean, we're sitting here in the boxing club. People like to belong to the boxing club. You know, you're running the Cornermen. People like to belong to the Cornermen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just think, these are interesting concepts to throw about. So
yes,
starting off with friendship.
Okay.
So friendship, I would say, is hugely important. One of the most important things in our life. Yeah,
I think. When we talk about mental well-being, belonging, but friendship, really helps. The right friendships, and that's where we've got to say, we understand that sometimes people are loneliness and isolation. We talk about a lot, So it's something that really helps. Unfortunately, it's not something that, in my experience, everybody gets to experience. You're really lucky if you do have a really good friendship group that are around you and support you, and so that's where it can be really beneficial. And I think we're men's mental health, and I think there's there's definitely something about men and their mates. I'm sure there is for ladies as well, but we're talking about kind of men's mental well-being, and there's this kind of there is a kind of belonging to a brotherhood, belonging to your mates. You have a real loyalty to your mates. And I think sometimes that gets really painted as it can be a negative thing, but I think I'm a big believer in also it's a really huge positive, or can be a huge positive thing, and it does bring us. It is tied nicely because of that sense of belonging. When we go and see her, I'm a bit similar to you. I have friends that I've known 40 odd years, and I grew up together next door. You remember them as they always were, and when you get together, it's the same, and you feel a kind of sense of belonging. They kind of understand each other. That you really see the true person, because as life goes on, things happen and whatever. But people do stuff and fall away or fall into addiction. But you kind of, if you've known someone for that length of time, you remember them as that kind of all that potential. All that, and I think there's a real deep love that comes from those kind of those relationships. So I think yes, very important.
But one thing I wanted to ask you then that brought up to me when you were talking about the importance of the groups and loyalty and friendships and the difference between men and women in a way, reminded me of a Mickey Flanagan joke.
Okay, great.
When Mickey Flanagan was doing one of his stand-ups, and he said, and I went out with my mates, and I came home after a night out, and she said to me, How was G? How was, did you ask your mate how his wife was? And he said, I didn't ask how his wife was. No, I didn't even ask how he was. And it was very funny, and because it's very accurate at the time. And we often talk as well about sometimes the difficulty in a way of talking to your mates. It's great to have that support group. It's great to reach out to your mates and all that sort of thing. But we often talk about, especially, but we often go out to people in the building trade, and we might say, you're going out with your mates, you're getting on it at a weekend, in a way, it's kind of reinforcing. It might be detrimental to your relationships at home, but you're getting on a packet, you're getting on a beer, and your partner at home might not want you to do that, might want you back, and you see that as a bit of nagging, and it adds to the problems. But we were saying that sometimes people within those groups are not talking about their sort of deeper feelings, and you're often like masking it. And then you get people that facilitate that masking and facilitate that addiction.
Yes.
So, I mean, do you want to talk a bit about that? How those friendships, I'm not saying those are bad friendships at all. You're part of the group, you're part of that, but it's just like...
I mean, I think there's mates, aren't there? And then there's kind of, within those mates, there have people that you talk to. So you won't hang around with everybody within a group of mates. There'll be people that you go out to have fun with, and so there's not. And if you need, so we're always encouraging people to talk. In a way, that's why we set up the Cornermen, because sometimes it's not easy to talk to your mates, because especially if you're extremely close, or they know your partner, or whatever, or there's this kind of male bravado, you don't want to be seen as. But I would argue they're not the kind of friendships we're talking about. The kind of friendships we are talking about are your kind of mates that look after each other, and you can talk. But sorry, repeat the question again for me, John, because I started waffling there and I can't quite.
I was just talking about the friendships within groups now, because a large part of the Cornermen coming about was this thing, and and I don't know whether you think it's a myth or whether you think it's true, that men don't talk. And we always said that men do talk, they just talk in the gaps between things. Hence we use the boxing and other things to encourage people to have an activity rather than that face-to-face talking. I'm wondering if within those groups people aren't talking, or how are men talking within those groups to those mates?
Okay, well I can go from I can only talk about my related experience personally, and I don't, within my mates there are some really deep conversations that we've had. About horrific, people's mums have died, there's been addiction. They've been the conversations. Now, often they are in amongst, doing something, a bit like the Cornermen. There's laughter and there's joke and there's dark humour involved. And then there are kind of, I think the relationships you're talking about often tend to be kind of like acquaintances. So people are forced together at work or whatever, so they don't really have this deep connection. People want to look a certain way and act a certain way, and then it becomes this kind of almost bravado, where a lot of time what we hear is, for example, people who are on the site and they're struggling with addiction, they're not saying anything, but it sounds to me like everyone pretty much there doesn't want to be the one to sort of say, I'm really struggling here. So everybody's got this kind of pretense and not talking about it. But I would argue that they're not really the kind of the friendships, if that's happening, if you're in a place where everyone, the only relationship you've got is whether you do a line together and go get on it completely. I would argue that's not really a friendship. That's just something that you're tied up with. And it becomes this kind of badge, if you like. And then that does interfere with family relationships, with parenting. And so that's really destructive. And when I spoke, do you remember we got interviewed for Men's Health?
Yeah.
We spoke about, they really were worried about this return of the lads culture. And I sort of said, yes, but there are some positive sides to the lad. There's this really negative side if it goes toxic, but there's actually a really positive side to blokes being together. Even the Cornermen has come about from me and you talking and wanting to create this, and so I think men, we like to be with each other. We like to joke around. We don't sort of the Mickey Gervais. That's kind of like, but the Mickey Flanagan. It's a great line, but. We do like to sometimes be together, and we like to joke around, and we like to talk. But I think we won't sit down and sort of say, let's just meet for a coffee and let's talk about how are the kids. It's not the way we kind of do it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
we will bring them up in conversation. But
and how do you find within the Cornermen, obviously by the nature of the service that we're providing, somebody's going to come here and at a point of crisis, or they're very unhappy or they're struggling and all that sort of thing. And how do you find they talk about their friendships? And obviously the classic question would be, why not you're not just going and talking to your mates?
Yeah, because there'll be something really that they don't want to share with their mates. You know, really something quite personal. Sometimes because they're worried about the judgment from their mates, or the assumption that there's something wrong, particularly with them. A lot of with the Cornermen, it's, you know, I'm feeling like this. Is that right? It's like, yeah, everybody feels like that. Oh, really? And a lot of people think, oh, it's me. There's something wrong with me, because they're not asking. And then everyone goes, oh, yeah, no, I feel exactly the same at times. And they get that reassurance. A lot of people in their own head are sort of saying there's something differently wrong for me. So, or it might be that the relationships are too embedded so that they know everyone that they know. So if they say they might have something that's going on and they're worried that it might get told to a wife, for example, who might tell their wife. You know, that kind of, it can be too close. So often people describe just having someone that's a little bit separate, that they know is, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. You know, because if sometimes you tell the wrong person, you've got to be careful sometimes. You know, you say talk, but you've got to be careful who you're telling stuff to. Because if you tell the wrong person, that person goes out and they twist it, or they say it to the wrong person, it gets out, or they're having a drink and they say, bloody hell, have you heard about, you know, that stuff. Because yes, it's good to talk, but you've got to trust the person you're talking.
Well, I think that's a very interesting point, because obviously, you know, we are constantly, in a way, men are bombarded with this message of you need to talk, you need to talk, you need to talk, which is a great and positive message.
Yes.
But as you say, it's not as easy as that. It sounds so easy.
Where's the mechanisms?
Yeah.
For talking?
Yeah.
Because if you're at work,
and as you say, you know, if you can in a way you can fuck that up.
Yes.
Because you can talk to the wrong person. They're either not going to be interested, or they're it's going to be counterproductive.
Yes.
In the sense of what you're talking to them about.
Yeah. And, you know, we live in a world where you have to be a bit careful, because not everybody's nice. But that's just a fact.
Yeah.
But hopefully if it's your mate, it should be all right. But again, it's a bit more kind of like close sometimes. So, yeah, having that, and, you know, people say men talk, but where is the mechanisms is, you know, that's why we've created the Cornermen, because you say, right, well, men don't go to doctors. Well, yeah, because a lot of the guys I'm speaking to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, and they're working till, you know, the afternoon, you know, late. And so they can't, you know, where are they going to go? And then if they do get to the doctors, they get told, oh, you need to. So there are places, but there's not a lot, you know, thinking outside the box. And, you know, 12 men a day die by suicide. And there's lots of great awareness raising, but we need to do more than raise awareness. We need to have mechanisms for people to talk and find, you know, if men do struggle, why are they struggling? And what do we need to do to adapt our services to accommodate that? You know, even we're looking at the Cornermen, you know, we want to grow so that we can be a bit more kind of out of office hours, if you like, you know, to do some weekends and evening stuff, because that's when because we let people down. Well, not let people down, we can't help people in those areas, because there's only myself, if you like, that can't work, you know, all the hours and the weekends, because otherwise my mental health suffers. So it's it's a real, you know, it's a real problem. But, you know, hopefully we can show with the Cornermen, if you do, it doesn't have to be massively, you know, intellectual, although you are, John.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm on a higher plane.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. You know, it can just be really simple, which is come along, we'll do something, we'll have a structured chat, you know, and then we'll kind of just help, you know, motivate, you know, and so that's why, you know, it's be good to see some more projects like us coming up, because we do use that element of lad culture, mate culture. We have the same, you know, but we kind of have the kind of it's safe to talk element of it.
So going back into that friendship thing,
yes.
I mean, how do you? Because I was just thinking about my personal experience again, you know, like I say, and how I kind of treasure these older friendships.
Yes.
And I'm so lucky that I got back in touch with these people, and all, you know, it's all really positive. But there have been people along the way, I must admit, where I've dropped that friendship.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, well, I'm not really going to carry that one on. Even old ones that go back a long way. And I think that's been because I wouldn't say.
Well, sometimes it just lives change, doesn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the point. Lives change, but you kind of have to change with people. And if they're not changing with you, and where I've kind of, I wouldn't say walked away from the friendship, but almost parked the friendship, and it's generally been because things that we really enjoyed doing when we were younger, you know, they've kind of stayed.
Yes.
In that in that mode. And like I always said to you before, I think sometimes, it's like, we're always saying be careful of alcohol, be careful of drugs. But sometimes when you're young, it can be fun. And this is why it can be distracting. People get into it. But as you move on and as you change and as your responsibility level changes in life, which is kind of moving through life, then your priorities change and that's no longer a thing to you. And I've always said, that thing is, you can get pissed every night when you're 20 and it's kind of okay. And then if you're doing it when you're 50, it's always sad.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes, you move away from certain people.
Well, I think, I don't know if I mentioned it in the podcast before, but, those times you need to turn the page sometimes in your life. And if people aren't turning the page at the same rate as you, then it just naturally comes to an end. So you're talking about that. Yeah, when you're 16, 17, doing drugs and having fun with your mates is fun. You can see, yes, it's bad, you shouldn't encourage it. I'm sorry, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. And I often still say, there's not enough running away giggling in adult life for me.
Yeah.
It's knocking on the door and running away when you're 15 is funny. Doing it when you're 45 is a criminal offence.
Yeah.
Especially with all the ring cam doors nowadays.
Yeah.
You'd be all over spotted dick cop before you could take it. So, but I've found certainly, a theory of mine is that, when you're that age, you're not really kind of really thinking about, you're not emotionally mature, emotionally intelligent enough, and you're not really understanding what's going on in some other people's homes or the lifestyle other people are having. So, it tends to then get into the 20s, and then if you don't sort of turn a page and say, well, that was my bit of my life, that was fun, I'm going to package that up now and move on, I've got other responsibilities and other things, because there's other stuff that is just as fun, but it doesn't seem that way sometimes when you're 17. There's other stuff you can do, and if you don't turn the page and then sort of go, all right, that was my part, I'm in this part of my life now, you can kind of get stuck, especially if it then becomes a kind of way of coping. So if you find, right, you start using drugs or start using more because, we're dealing with emotion, and then it becomes, and if you don't, then you realise when looking back, I've spoke to guys, when you're at school, you don't realise that their dad was beating the shit out of you, like, what? And so, for someone that it becomes a coping mechanism and it carries on into life. So I think it's really complicated, but ultimately it's about whether you can turn that page and say, well, that, and some people unfortunately don't, and they start to see it as, I'm not going to become old and boring or whatever, or they're using it for self-medication. But you're right, when it starts getting 40s, 50s, it's ironically, it's that kind of, I'm not going to get old and boring. And exactly what happens is you get older and more boring quicker. Yeah, and you've only got the same stories to tell.
Yeah.
And people...
Which on that subject, and coming into friendship as well, something I've often heard from people struggling with addiction is the need to change their friendship group.
Yes.
Because a large part of that is going into rehab, coming out, and then trying to change the circumstances that they're operating in and the situations in which they were using, which often can be with a certain group of people, which might genuinely be really good friends and long-term good friends.
Yeah. And so that's one of the, but in my experience, and is if you're going to deal with addiction, you need to make some real deep cuts. You need to make some real hefty choices, otherwise you're going to stay in addiction. That's just the kind of, so sometimes you have to let go of things that you love in a way. That's, the drug or people, and they have to have their own journey. And that's where it's the heartbreak, and we've spoke about it before. Doing the right thing doesn't always feel good.
Yeah.
And if you kind of a mate that you love, but he's we've all known them, the guys, that we loved and we've seen them fall into addiction, and we know they're a bad influence, and you just love them being in your life because they make you laugh, but sometimes you have to say, I've got to let you go, like a bad relationship. So that's you're right, but it's not going to be a woo, I feel great for doing that. It's it's something I've got to do for my own sake. And I think that's what be interesting to hear other people's opinions, but that's what I've seen work for people, is making them tough decisions and suffering, and letting go, and then finding, and then often people find really other friends, and so that have been through similar things or whatever. So, and really supportive and find better supportive networks.
And friendship as well. I'm going to segue now. Watch how I do this. Really cool.
Chimpanzee riding on a Segway. It's a great YouTube video.
No, I'll look that up when we get out.
Chimpanzee riding on a Segway, yeah. It's just about 5 minutes of a chimpanzee on a Segway. With
brilliant.
that song, yeah.
So that friendship can give you that core feeling of belonging to something, belonging to a group that's meaningful, belonging to a group that, you know, that gives you an identity. And so in that whole sense of belonging being also so important. And I think they cross over those things. But it's interesting. I mean, obviously we work here at the boxing club.
Yes.
The boxing club has been open 20 years now. We've had people who have been members for 20 years. You know, and we've got lots of long-term members. And when I started it off, I didn't want it to be a gym. I wanted it to be a club. You know, and I saw that as a definite difference, where you sort of you go to a gym, but you belong to a club. And similarly, like you say, you know, we do the merch for the Cornermen, and people wear the Cornermen hoodies and T-shirts, and you know that's quite popular. We've even had the Cornermen tattoo.
Yes,
that somebody's had. So it's that feeling of belonging and belonging to a club, and how important that is to give you that sense of grounding. And obviously, I think personally, in my experience, the older you get, the more that becomes important. And you know, and like with me, like I was talking about travelling back to Dublin, travelling back to Donegal, you know, and sort of, you know, kind of immersing yourself in that culture as well. I mean, how do you find that sense of belonging? How does that manifest itself? Well, I mean, an obvious manifestation is Arsenal.
Yeah, well, it is, and you know, appropriate. It's kind of it's the anniversary of my father's death today when we're recording this. So yeah, no, you know, that's the kind of, you know, that, you know.
How many years, Steve?
8 years.
Right.
Yeah. So Arsenal is people, you know, football, and it gives you a sense of belonging because, you know, it was my dad's team. It's his dad's team. You know, it's the streets around there are tied in with stories that I was told when I was a child about what they used to get up to and during the war and
your daughter Maisie is now.
Yeah, Maisie comes
sort
with
of full
me.
on in now. She's not being brought along by dad anymore, is she? She's wanting to go.
She goes, and you know, there's a plaque to my granddad outside, you know, that we kiss every time. But it's just it's that sense of kind of, we don't have many kind of traditions in our culture anymore, or any kind of things that get passed down. So football for me, and my identification with Arsenal Football Club, thankfully they're quite good, is tied up. You know, I can remember my dad taking. I'm there. You know, when I go there, you know, I'd have been here with my dad. I've been here with my granddad. You know, so it's all those things tied up. So the game is important. But going is you know, going and being part and being there. So yeah, it makes me feel connected to my family and my dad, and you know, so it's really quite powerful, you know.
I mean, interesting enough with that sense of belonging. So you're talking about that sense of belonging, and that's that familial sense of belonging. And it's very interesting to me that you talked about that depth of generational belonging, which I have in Donegal.
Yes.
But we live a much more transitory life now, and like me and you particularly, you know, we've been in this area for a long time.
Yeah.
But we don't actually come from this area, so we haven't got that generational connection to this area. We've got lots of friends, and lots of history, but it doesn't go as deep. And I think that's very common for people. You know, people are much more transitory. People move around a lot more, and you know, that's been going on for a few generations now. And
also, just I'll try to segue slightly back, but it occurred to me that yes, that we're not, but I think also sometimes you were talking about moving away, stepping out of where you where you grew up is quite helpful at times.
Yeah, because
I think you can get stereotyped. You're the joker, or you're the mad one that does it, you know, and then you stay in these kind of roles you were given as a child.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think, you know, and then I think that's why we have a bit more of a sense of belonging, because we're not, you know, I mean, it was only up the road, Milton Keynes way, but you know, you step out, and so I think that was quite helpful as well, because for myself, that sense of belonging, my mates, I didn't feel the pressure to really get involved in mates around here, so it could all come naturally, because my mates were back home, back in, you know, and they're my mates, and they still are, you know. I don't feel, so I always feel that, you know, there's always that base of mates but it was really helpful for me, because I think I was joking the other day, you know, if I'd have stayed around where we were, I'd probably be sat now in my pants playing PlayStation, smoking weed, you know. Well, I think and the Cornermen would never have happened.
We all need to go through this process of reinvention.
Yes.
We need to go through this process of reinvention a lot of times in our life.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you can compare it to the death and resurrection.
Yeah.
You know, we need to go through that process.
Yeah.
And that's a healthy process to go through. And like you say, but if you want to do a major, you know, a reinvention, moving away without the constraints of what people expect of you.
Yeah,
and
you
the
can really
history.
break the mold.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you can really like that. Be someone else.
Yeah, and this is not running away from stuff.
No,
this is just.
It's a kind of, you're taking a risk. You're stepping out. You know, it's that
and it's a clean slate. And you haven't got the crutch of what you're known for and what but you've got a clean slate.
Yes.
So yeah.
So yes, I think there's that you're going on that adventure, but you've kind of got a sense of belonging where you're from. So I think that it is quite healthy. But yeah, as long as running away can be difficult, but I think if we're talking in that context, I found helpful.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes some of the guys, when they're thinking about it, especially if they're really local and they've lived there all their lives and they're kind of seen in a certain light by everyone, I think it's quite helpful sometimes to go and be someone different, be the better version of you somewhere else. Take your experiences, your learning, and take that, because we've seen people who don't take the risk at certain points in their lives, and then they get into their 50s, 60s, and we start thinking the road's running out. Yeah. Why didn't I take those?
Well, you often hear that, don't you? I mean, there's always this thing about these deathbed, deathbed. What do they regret? And it's often not the things they regretted; it's the things they regretted not doing.
Yes.
So that they really missed out on. They never made that leap.
But yeah, sorry for slightly going off belonging, but belonging. Even when you think of we're talking about, we're trying to combat loneliness and isolation. So to try and give someone a sense of belonging, especially even if that is within the Cornermen, you're part of the. That's why we don't sort of don't say to people, right, you finish your time with your Cornermen and you're off now, and it's like you're part of the Cornermen. You know where we are. You want to.
Well, I've seen you use that often as a tactic to find out a bit more about people, find out what they're interested in, and maybe introduce them to groups that may be relevant to them.
Yes. Because,
like you say, what we're really trying to do is combat the worst killer, which is loneliness and isolation.
Yeah. And so people are like, well, how does it work? You can't have people on forever. Well, people don't want to stay. They don't need to be forever. They come when they need and they come when they back out. But it's about you get to know someone and then you get to just hear what they're interested in. You go, all right, well, these people over here are doing that. Do you want to go and join them? Yeah, that sounds right. And then you're trying to, because obviously we don't just talk in the Cornermen. We're trying to help find. Often, there's talking, which is great, but talking doesn't solve everything. There's actions, and I can't do the actions for someone. They've got to do the actions. They've got to be the hero in their own story.
But I think talking. The important thing lays the ground for the action.
Yeah, exactly, because you're trying to cover it. Where's the areas the actions are needed?
Yeah, and what you do is you talk about what action you would like to take, what action you think is a sensible action to take, and often, like you say, people know what the action is they need to take, but they need to outline it to you, and then once it becomes stronger. Verbalized, it becomes stronger, and then the action can actually take place.
Yeah, and people don't. Yeah.
You need to be clear about what the action you're going to take is.
Yeah, and people don't need it sort of drilled home to them. Do you know what you're doing is really, really bad? You're taking ketamine or whatever. They know. And need someone to say, right, you've fucked up. Let's go again. Right, come on, keep trying. There's no other option. There's no other option.
Yeah,
yeah. Let's go. If you want to do something about it. So, and people, I think, like to feel, I can do something about this. So you're right. The talking is essential and it's good, but from those talks out comes action points, if you like, or where people want to sort of make some changes, or not really, So that's and people like the encouragement, I think, rather than a kind of, you're doing really bad.
Yeah, but I think that's a major thing. I mean, I think that's something we lack very much in this culture is encouragement. We don't actually encourage people. We do knock people down a lot.
Yeah,
but we don't really encourage. And it's almost like we're almost looking around. To knock people down.
Well, negativity just spreads, doesn't it?
Really, yeah.
And now we're in a kind of way where you get your likes and your subscriptions. If you can be really horrible and negative about either sides on things or whatever, you're going to get it, unfortunately. So you get rewarded for your negativity.
Yeah.
Which is a bit shit.
Yeah.
But if people feel like they belong, it certainly, we all want to feel like we belong somewhere. I think it's a massive issue for people if they haven't, if people have had transient lives and they've never really got that group of friends or family. It's really hard. Really hard for people. So.
Yeah. I think it's very. I think there's that eternal question that a lot of people feel, to a greater or lesser extent, is where do I fit in? Where do I belong?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like if your answer, you know, people's answer to that, I think, is generally a bit like, well, you know, they've got an answer. They may not feel it's completely true, but I think some people just feel I don't know where I fit in. I don't know where I belong.
Then they start to think it's a problem with them.
Yeah.
You know, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
You just haven't found your tribe.
Yeah. Well, that's the key word. Find your tribe.
Because there's lots of people, you know, and I think particularly the guys with sort of autistic spectrum disorders, you know, that's really tough because of all the social, you know, trying to read people and feel like they're masking. So that's a really tough one for those guys as well.
Yeah, which I think is that interesting thing as well, bringing that back to friendship, which is the recognition that we are totally social. We need to be social, which is why, you know, you lose your mind if you get social isolation for too long. But what we don't realise we're doing is we're constantly calibrating ourselves against each other.
Yes.
So we're constantly, you know, when I walk in a room, even if I don't know, you know, I might make a joke and you laugh.
Yeah.
And if you don't laugh, I'll be like, it's not that funny.
I might think, am I really that short? And then I come and stand next to you.
And but it's this constant calibration, and we are constantly pulling each other up. And your good friends will do that to you, and they will pull you up and say, "That's a bit out of line," or "That's really good," or "That's there's nothing behind it to pull you down or build you up." It's just an honest way that you can calibrate yourself, and then I think you feel more comfortable. And I think, like you say, if you haven't got those genuine friendships, you never really open up to calibrate yourself properly.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're still, like you say, masking. You're thinking, should I say this? Shouldn't I say this? Shouldn't I? And so you're a bit nervous. So you're never really kind of, in a way, for want of a better phrase, letting it all hang out. Talking to someone in a really honest way, somebody who will give you the feedback of like, what a load of nonsense. Or isn't that great? You know, which you need. And then you can be, you know, more true to yourself by calibrating yourself against people who really have your best interests at heart. So I think that's a major importance of friendship. And I think without that proper calibration, you know, you struggle. People, and you turn inward.
If your friends aren't doing that, they're maybe just acquaintances.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the other danger is that if you're not getting that, then you're going to look outside of yourself for people to almost calibrate against. And there's lots of extreme ideologies and views out there. You might think, well, I could belong to that. That's my tribe.
Exactly.
And then you're kind of taking on views that you may not necessarily fully believe yourself, but you're trying to parrot them. And, you know, I think that's how people get sucked down, especially in today's culture.
Well, maybe that's a consequence, you know, of, you know, this lack of sense of belonging that we do have. You know, and this kind of...
So people are looking almost for that larger belonging.
Well, if you look at transiency, where people don't feel to have a connection to their, you know, where they're from and their past and their, you know, familial, it's all, you know, it's all can get thrown into the mix, really. And if you take, you know, like you were saying, isolation is not good for anyone. Well, it's no wonder you know, the whole countries were isolated. We're locked in solitary confinement for 2 years. Well, no wonder we've got a mental health epidemic.
And also this epidemic of identity politics. And what is identity politics? It's about belonging.
Belonging
To a group.
That flag. It's my flag. That. Take that flag down. No, put that flag up. Take that flag down. I'll put my one up.
And it's also like, where do I belong? Well, what characteristics have you got? You know, it's like, what colour are you? What sexuality are you? That's who you belong. That's who you are. And your views can be these views.
I don't know when it's like, I mean, in the 90s, it was like everyone's everything. Now, we're sort of that people want to belong, but with there's very defined areas you're allowed to belong in.
Yeah. And also a lot of the belonging of those groups is defined in opposition to other groups.
Yes.
So, you know, which again gets a bit toxic. But also, you know, you get people who therefore reject their original friendship groups because they want to belong to this group. And like I said to you before, I think if these people aren't genuine friends, then people that can't necessarily be themselves and calibrate themselves properly against those people.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think it's a very good point. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's very interesting. But I think on the, you know, friendships and belonging, if it's, you know, if they are the right ones, it's so good for you. Yeah. You know, and
I think it's worth saying, you know, it's healthy to treasure and foster those friendships. And I think a lot of those friendships you often have, like I think yours friendships and my friendships, the very early friendships in particular, you don't necessarily always, because you do take them for granted.
Well, they're like family when you've known them since when you've known them since you were 4. You know, and then you're into you kind of it's great. You can meet up and it's like you don't almost see them as friends. They're kind of. They are almost family, aren't they? Because you remember them as, you know, you've gone through so much. So, yeah, it's I don't know what my point was then. I started to drift in. What were we talking about? Can you calibrate me?
I think
as a friend, can you calibrate me from waffling?
The importance of old friendships, I think.
Yeah,
the importance of treasuring those friendships and realising those friendships. And often I think because they've been there a long time, you don't appreciate them maybe as you fully should.
And unfortunately, sometimes the slap in the face comes when you lose one.
Yeah.
You know, and so we both lost friends, and so that's when it kind of and you know, life's so short. Enjoy your friends, enjoy your family. Enjoy, you know.
Well, it's a common thing when you do lose those friends. It's like, if only I could have that other conversation, those things that weren't said. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it wouldn't be there is no ultimate conversation.
No, and there'd probably be a lot. You know, one of the things we haven't mentioned is the amount of ribbing. Piss taking of each other. You know, and I think that gets misinterpreted at times. And I think there's probably a class thing as well, because when I moved to Oxford and started what I thought was, you know, joking around, people got offended. Like, oh no, actually I'm showing love in a way. You know, people, you know, one of the ways me and my friends show love is sometimes to be really brutal with each other. You know, and I don't know what that's, but that, you know, I think that needs to, you know, but I get worried that can get pushed out. You know, people say, oh, you can't say anything that, you know, well, if I love someone and I'm joking, they're fine. They're going to take it the way it's meant to be. You know, you might hear it. So that, because I just had someone sort of, if a comedy willy gets drawn somewhere, everyone sort of says, Steve, have you seen this? Like, you know, and so an ex-colleague of mine, she contacted me and said, oh, my son's in trouble at school because he's drawn a knob on his mate's neck. So I was like, genius. Like, she's like, but he's in trouble. I was like, oh no, is he? I mean, I get a little bit of a ticking off, but so I think the other lad was okay with it. They were both laughing, but you know, I think he got, you know, he's been drawing something sexual, you know, and all that. No, the lad's just drawn a knob on his mate's neck. That's all there is to it. You know, it's just lads being lads.
Yeah.
You know, if you make more of it, you're gonna make it like just roll your eyes at it. Tell him to wash it off. You know, and carry on. Right, sit down. Do you realise what you've... Oh, no, I was just drawing a knob on my next mate's neck. You know, they're like 12-year-old boys. They're not really thinking deeply about, this is the patriarchal symbol that I'm sitting on, you know. It's just, he drew a knob on his mate's neck.
Yeah.
I would still do it today.
Yes, and it wouldn't have sexual undertones.
No.
And by inferring them in there, you're making it worse than it is.
Maybe that should be our flag. It's just a proper cock and balls. That'd get taken down quite quickly, I think.
I don't know. I might be quite popular. You'd go around putting that
the cock and ball movement.
Well, people would want to belong.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, you'd make some great friendships in there.
We're part of the knobs.
Right, well, having come up with an amazing proposal that solves all these
problems. Come and belong to the knobs.
that solves all this friendship and belonging things.
Yeah.
I think we'll draw a line.
Send it on that highbrow note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice one, Steve.
Thank you.
Back next month.
Yeah. Cheers, Marky.